In a quiet room, every sound bounces back. That's basic physics. But there's a psychological version of this that often goes unnoticed. When a child reaches out emotionally, they're not always looking for advice or long conversations. Sometimes all they need is a look, a touch, a subtle shift in someone's expression that says, "I see you." That response is the echo. When nothing comes back, no acknowledgement, no reflection, the child doesn't blame the environment. They assume their voice didn't matter. That's where the story begins. For years, psychology has focused on trauma as something visible and event-based. Accidents, violence, moments with a clear before and after. Those experiences absolutely count. But this focus has overlooked another kind of pain, one defined not by what happened, but by what consistently didn't. The house was intact. The caregivers were physically present. Yet birthdays were forgotten. Tears went unnoticed. Important words were met with distracted eyes. These absences don't sound dramatic when explained out loud, but they leave subtle, lasting imprints. This is what psychologists call childhood emotional neglect. It remained understudied partly because it's invisible. It's about missing attunement, missing reflection, missing emotional mirroring. Children learn about their inner world the same way they learn language, through feedback. When a caregiver says, "You seem upset. Is that right?" They're teaching the child that feelings are real, nameable, and worthy of attention. Without that reflection, a child may grow into an adult who genuinely struggles to identify what they're feeling. There's even a term for this difficulty, alexithymia. Research consistently shows higher rates of it among those who experienced emotional neglect early in life. It's not a flaw in character. It's the result of an emotional gap. Adults shaped by this often appear highly capable. They're dependable, productive, and outwardly fine. Presenting as fine became a skill so early that it feels natural. Clinicians frequently describe these individuals as reporting a vague sense that something is off, not clear-cut depression or textbook anxiety, but a muted, disconnected quality. Life can feel slightly distant, as if experienced through glass. Relationships tend to expose the wound. When someone offers genuine affection, it may feel uncomfortable rather than comforting. Compliments get brushed aside. Consistent love feels suspicious, even overwhelming. If care was unpredictable in childhood, it makes sense that relying on it would feel unsafe. So a coping style forms: self-sufficiency, independence, low expectations. It may look like strength, but it often began as protection. Needs don't disappear. They simply quiet down when they learn that making noise doesn't change anything. Research continues to support this pattern. A 2024 scoping review in the journal Child Abuse and Neglect examined dozens of studies and found consistent links between early neglect and later difficulty regulating emotions. Emotional neglect remains one of the least researched forms of childhood adversity, perhaps because what's hardest to see is easiest to dismiss. Here's the crucial point. The behaviors you developed weren't mistakes. They were intelligent adaptations. The quiet child learned that silence reduced risk. The funny child learned humor attracted attention. Others became overachievers, caretakers, or emotionally invisible. Those strategies worked. The challenge is that coping mechanisms don't automatically retire when circumstances change. You may no longer be in that silent room, but your nervous system might still act as if you are, tensing when someone gets close, feeling uneasy with kindness, struggling to interpret your own emotions. The hopeful part is that change is possible. The brain remains adaptable. Therapeutic approaches tailored to emotional neglect can help. Healing, though, often involves grieving something intangible, the absence of what should have been. Mourning what never occurred is complicated. It takes time and usually support. But it begins with something smaller, taking your own inner experience seriously. Just because no one responded when you needed them doesn't mean your feelings were unworthy. They always mattered. In daily life, this looks subtle. Noticing anger and allowing it to exist instead of suppressing it. Catching yourself dismiss a compliment and pausing to ask why. Checking in with your internal state, even if no one ever modeled how. Change isn't dramatic. It accumulates in small moments of attention. For someone who grew up unheard, learning to hear themselves is transformative. If you've ever stumbled across the phrase emotional neglect and felt a quiet recognition, pay attention to that. Naming something doesn't fix it instantly, but recognition itself is a form of response. It's your nervous system beginning to echo back what once fell into silence. Your voice was always worth hearing. It just needed a space where it could be reflected.